Hello, I'm George Middleton. Get ready for a great show.
Black space is a place for us.
Real people with real issues.
Discussing real topics.
Black space.
A safe space for our community.
All right. I'm George Middleton, your host this evening on this podcast episode of Black Space Live. The topic and title of our show today is Part 2 of Who Hurt You? A conversation about relationship trauma. Before we get started, I'd like to take this time briefly to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. In other words, don't be selfish with this content. Share the love. Let's reintroduce our panelists for today. In part one, these two amazing panelists left a lot on my mind to deal with. So it took me 2 to 3 weeks just to recover from that first conversation. So we're back. And ladies, if you wouldn't mind reintroducing yourselves to the viewers, listeners, watchers, beginning with Miss Stacy.
Good evening. My name is Stacy. RN, BSN, mental health, behavior health, development, disabled adults. Nice to meet y'all, and you'll have a good night.
Well, welcome back, Stacy. And Miss Donita Holmes.
Good evening. Donita Holmes. I am an organizational psychologist, a licensed clinical social worker, and specialty is adolescents, adults, couples, and families.
And forgive me, I should have introduced you as Dr. Donita Holmes. So, we're back. How have your relationships been since we last spoke?
No,
Dr. Holmes, look, I'm still smarting from that little comment. I'm still smart from that. So first chance I get, I'm going to pay you back.
Be easy with me.
Well, how can I be any rougher with my little one time? That stuck with me. I was laughing about that for the last 2 weeks, man. I'm like, I can't believe she set me up like that. I can't believe it. So, hey, I had a bunch of questions on here that we didn't get to because, every time we get into one piece of it, there were just so many layers, so many angles. And I'm not even going to try to keep it simple. We're just going to let it go where it goes. We ended part one on the question, if everyone is in pain, how can we keep it from affecting our relationships? And so I want to kind of pick up from there and make that the backdrop for our conversation, and then introduce another question as we're considering that.
Okay.
So here we are in 2022. First question. In 2022, about to be 23, are lifelong relationships a realistic goal?
Lifelong relationships?
Lifelong monogamous relationships, are they is that a realistic goal?
Yes.
Yeah, we covered this in part 1 too, but my answer hasn't changed since a couple of weeks ago.
We talked about that question?
Yes.
Lifelong relationships are a realistic goal?
we tapped into it a little bit, but yeah, we you asked the question about you did ask the question about lifelong relationships. And yeah, that's something that and we both agree God is still real, so lifelong relationships are still real.
Okay. So I had a part two to that. When you brought up that God is still real, and I'm hoping that I didn't cover this because if we did, then it must have been like really on a peripheral level. One of these primary coping strategies recommended for long-term monogamous relationships, committed relationships, marriages to be specific, is having a spiritual foundation. Is today's religious environment, religious practices, religious effectiveness, is that creating healthy relationships as it pertains to today, our current culture? Has the profession of spirituality progressed to become relevant to addressing relationships of today?
Myself personally, I think it's depending on your relationship that you have with God. You know who, well, it not necessarily whoever your entity that you worship. I think it has to do with that person's own personal relationship with that entity. Mine is God. And I feel like the more you learn about yourself in your own spiritual walk, yeah, but you have to know who you are within your religion and what you follow, and not just listening to all the. I think there is a hype around religion too. People want to hear the rights, they want to hear the good stuff, but they don't want to hear the bad stuff. So I feel like once people are, once people know who they are within their religion and know the real part of religion, I think it does have a lot to do with it. But if you just only want to listen to pick and choose what parts you want to listen to, maybe it doesn't. They want the feel good part of it. And then they want the feel good part of the relationship.
What do you think, Dr. Holmes?
Well, I know that typically when people hear religion, like their ears like perk up, or it can cause, disdain in some, and for others, it can be, that trigger word that is inspirational. You started out with the question and you asked it from a standpoint of a spiritual base. To me, a spiritual base, whether you say it's from religion, whether you say it's a higher power and you refer to that as somebody other than God, it's, to me, ultimately something that takes you outside of yourself, that gets you to think beyond yourself. We live in such a selfish culture. And even in relationships in general, a lot of the struggle, or that I've seen with clients that I've worked with, is because people are so self-absorbed. People have lost the concept of lack of understanding of what serving means. I'm not serving, I'm not submitting, or not even having an understanding of what those words truly mean. It's been distorted for so long that people resist it as soon as they hear certain words. Religion is a trigger word, and people will respond better to if you say, a spiritual base. Ultimately, whatever you believe in, if you believe in something other than your own, something outside of yourself or above or beyond yourself, to me is necessary for you to coexist with somebody else or have a lifelong partner.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because in this culture, would you describe this culture today as an altruistic culture, a selfless culture, a culture more collective oriented rather than individual oriented?
Absolutely not.
What do you think? What do you think attributes to that? What has changed?
Well, in general, historically, America in and of itself is an individualistic culture. So if you want to find a collectivist culture, you're going to have to start looking, smaller. You're not going to have, you can't look at it here globally, but not globally. That's not the right word. But here in America, you're going to generally find more individualistic cultures than you will find collectivistic cultures. I surround myself with collectivistic cultures, but you know how I find that through diversity, through friends who come from those type of cultures. I don't get it if I stayed in the neighborhoods where I grew up with the people that I was most comfortable with, I would have never experienced or been able to immerse myself in a collectivistic culture. It was very much every man for himself. Do what you need to do to get ahead. Whatever that means, that's your focus. You're not taught to look or necessarily consider somebody else unless that is deeply rooted in how you were raised. That's just not something you come across. You go out here in the world and you go to work and you are facing people that will step on your back, just to use you as a leg up, not to help you, but to use you as a stool or stepping stone to get to where they want to get to. So we experience it everywhere we go, whether it's a relationship, at work. Very individualistic culture here.
Friendships, family, it's everywhere.
Yep.
So I'm doing just googling some statistics on whether religion is increasing or decreasing. And statistically speaking, a most recent study published in 2022 by the Pew Research Center has found a retention rate of American Christians closer to 67%, and cited that the decline of Christianity is primarily due to people leaving Christianity and choosing to have no religious affiliation. Then in another little short citation here, it states that as societies develop, the question is, why is religion suddenly declining? And it states here, as societies develop from agrarian to industrial to knowledge-based, growing existential security tends to reduce the importance of religion in people's lives, and people become less obedient to traditional religious leaders and institutions. And I find that a really interesting aspect, psychologically speaking, of human behavior, meaning that when we were more agrarian based, we were more spiritual, it seems like. But as we moved into the technology phase, industrial age, and knowledge base, which that is more an internal piece, we become more aware and more knowledgeable. Somehow that correlates with a feeling of less dependence on a religious or spiritual perspective. How does that hit you? Let's start with you, Doc.
You know what? I don't know if I would say it makes, well, of course, with technology comes knowledge, but the other side to that too comes complacency as well. I think just having access to knowledge, but not knowing how to put it in context or perspective can be a dangerous thing. So while we might look at it from, it's an advancement, we have access to all this information now, but that just means people distorted little information. So now you give them more to distort or mold it into their own frame of reference. Does it necessarily, have a positive outcome? Does it lead us astray or closer to? I don't know. To me, I think there are good things, the positive things that come with some traditional aspects of what the culture was like prior, and I think there are some positive aspects of what comes with increased technology and knowledge. I just think how we use it and what we do with it is what becomes the issue. It's how we use it. We can weaponize anything. And people do. They will weaponize anything. They will villainize anything. Having knowledge and depending on the packages in, especially for people of color, was villainized. The more we learned, the more knowledge we gained, the more aware we became, depending on who you were around, whether they looked like you or not, it could have been villainized. So,
well, I'm listening to you speak, and several things are going through my mind. The idea that a more agrarian society tends to be more religiously based, tends to be more integrated with traditional religious principles and practices. In that context of society, the roles were definitely more defined. There were definitely strong male roles and strong female roles. That, for lack of a better term, that made life simpler. Men were men, women were women. And we weren't very complex in our thinking. We were more willing to just say, not everything is meant to know. Just have faith. As society develops, those roles become diminished. So I think that has a strong impact on the quality and development of relationships, because after all, this is about, the discussion topic is about the trauma and pain of relationships.
well, do they diminish or have some of them evolved? Because you can look at it from two different angles.
Good question. Do they diminish? I would say at least from the superficial standpoint, coming from most males' perspective, today's male tends to feel that his position has become diminished. And statistically speaking, it would support that. It would support that feeling or that perception. There seems to be a correlate within those statistics that the fastest rising population economically and employment wise is the racial demographic Black female.
But why is that typically associated with some, and I use the word very intentionally, some men equate that with their role as diminishing?
Great question.
Because they're not providers, and they feel like they're not providers. But at the same time, that's where it comes to with like I say, your relationship with religion. But the simple fact is, you got to understand, we've seen a lot of, and what in the last, I know since I've been grown, was able to actually see what's going on in the world. There's a lot of pastors out there. Like when I was younger, divorce was never like something I really knew about. But then you start seeing pastors getting divorces. You start seeing pastors cheating. You start seeing clergymen molesting children. How much faith does people actually have in religion when they're watching the people and not having a personal relationship with whatever religion they're in, whatever spirituality they have? They're not grasping their own relationship. So that's right there is already a trauma in a relationship right there. You create your own trauma by not knowing where you are spiritually. So if you don't have that identity, how can you even like continue to even, you can't even be disciplined to be in your spiritual realm. So how can you be disciplined to actually be here and having a relationship with somebody else?
That's a really good observation. Back in the day, a divorced pastor, that was almost unheard of.
Exactly.
And now we have pastors that have been, in and out 3 or 4 times. And it's not really frowned upon.
But you know what? The undertones, or what we don't want to talk about, is just those very lessons as well that people use, or that religion that was weaponized even within our own community, and used to misguide us even as we were growing up. So even when we went to the churches, and I'll say, I went to a church, and I'm not going to say where it was, some years ago. And, the pastor was like, the Lord wants me to have a personal jet. So
right,
right before they pass the plate, right? So people put so much stock in, like Stacey said, looking at flawed human beings. They're not God. They're just as flawed as everybody else that's sitting up in that building, wherever they are. But people, to me, a lot of times look at other people who are just as imperfect, and it becomes an excuse, right, for why I don't want to do the work. Because to be honest, if you have faith in anything, I don't care whether you call yourself Christian, Muslim, whatever, it requires work. Exactly. And the reality is, I run into more people who don't want to do the work.
Now, real quick, the pastor with the little jet. There is a national pastor who's famous for that. We're not talking about the same pastor, are we?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
He
gained national recognition just on, hey, I require a jet to do the Lord's work. But okay,
this was years ago.
He was gonna get high enough to he was gonna get high enough to Jesus so he can talk to him.
Stacy.
The ultimate upper room.
He was gonna he was gonna give some sky high miles. Okay.
Ooh, Stacy, you hit them zingers, boy. You slide them in, and nobody knows. They just walk away bleeding. Oh, you deadly with yours. So, Dr. Holmes, I'm still trying to make this connection. Okay. You're saying the weaponization of religion as it pertains to the roles, the role of the male and the female. So there's like 3 contexts that I can think of right now.
Okay.
In relationships and marriages that I think test one's religious fiber, spiritual belief system.
Okay.
So let's take the traditional perspective, the traditional religious perspective on marriage is, in terms of the roles, is that the man is the head of the household.
Okay.
That's the traditional marital perspective. There's so many aspects in today's culture that threatens that role.
What is the head of the household? What does that mean?
Well, exactly. See, we didn't have to ask that before. Just the fact that we're asking that now is an example of how, as we develop, we start to fine tune or maybe rearrange or evolve or whatever. I guess we're trying to figure out which way to discuss this. But back in the day, it was not even in question what that meant. The man was the head. Just the basic understanding, the man being in the head of the household, the man was the lead, head, right? Head. The man was the lead. All things came through him first before it came through the family.
Okay.
He was depended on, especially in the more traditional agrarian environment, and even in some of the early industrial phases of our development.
Okay, so
he was dependent on being that breadwinner, that head, that protector, that provider.
Okay, so I heard the breadwinner, which is historical, is tied to money, and it's. But you gave some other nuggets and descriptions of what it meant to be the head, right? Seeking and going, that confidant or that consultation that goes through him for making decisions for the family, right? You started to give some detail about
that's right. That's
what
right.
that look like, right?
Yeah, there's even the belief and practice at the time. It's less stated these days, but the agreement. And I heard a couple say it just not too long ago who've been married a very long time. If we both come up on a disagreement and we can't figure it out, default comes to the man's decision.
I still believe that.
See, so and there's debate now in today's culture on a very simple principle like that.
But that's if he's able to lead, though. That's the whole thing.
There you go, Stacey.
That's the whole thing.
No. Hold. Wait. Hold up. If you married him, then that means he's able to lead. Well, listen.
No.
Wait, hold up. Yeah. Oh yes. Because that is a reflection on your choice as well.
Exactly.
Why would you marry a man who you doubted his ability to lead? And let me put some meat on the bones of what that means to lead. A leader doesn't always have to know the solution to the problem to lead. So when a leader, and I alluded to this in part one, where the leader needs you most is in times of doubt, uncertainty, and adversity. You have to have trust in that leader. He may not know the answer at the time, but leaders don't need to know the answer in order to lead.
But they have to know where to get it.
Yeah, but they don't. They got to know how to delegate.
But what you all have to do as wives, by this principle, what you two all have to be able to do as wives is trust. You can't second guess them. You can't come behind them. You can support them. You can provide information in a supportive way, but you can't come at him as questioning his leadership, because once you do that, you've weakened the unit. If you have married a person whose leadership that you question, then you married the wrong person.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's where the relationship trauma come in too. That's why it's good before you marry to understand yourself and understanding your worth and what you need out of a man. Myself personally, I need a man can tell me to go to hell in the most gentle, loving way in the world and tell me to shut the hell up.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I overspeak. So yeah, if you able to lead like that with gentleness, love, kindness, that's what you want. That's the type of leader you want. But at the same time, he know when he needs help, how to ask for help, or when to delegate when he don't know something.
Well, I'll tell you what to fix that whole problem is when y'all start acting up, just threaten them by withholding that one time from them.
Divorce.
You might be trying to control me like that. I ain't gonna give you none.
Girl, you do that one.
Right.
You do that one more time. No more 30 seconds for you.
So then, am I wrong if I bust out laughing? And I pull out something and say that's okay?
Hey, you know, but.
Ooh, God.
Let me tell you, girl, after 30 seconds, you can be knocked out. You ain't gonna be trying to pull nothing else out. You believe me?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, well, I guess that little trick ain't gonna work.
But you know what? The other side to that too, though, is people are good at putting on a show.
Okay.
People are good at holding it together.
Mm-hmm.
People are good at convincing you that yes, they are a believer, they are a leader, they have all these things, and then you may find out later when the mask comes off or that certain situation occurs where you get to really see the true person, and nothing lines up with what was happening before.
So are you speaking of the genuine, authentic leader, or are you speaking of the manipulative?
I'm speaking of the manipulative, which exists more often than not.
The gaslighter, the person that's gonna gaslight you like they're a leader.
Okay. Yeah.
That's even at work. You have people that they took a leadership class, or they got a friend and they put them in leadership roles. They got family, they put them in leadership roles, but then they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to even out the load. And in nursing, especially working in a hospital on the floor, you find that a lot of times. You have leaders that, they can make an assignment, but they don't know how to do nothing on the assignment. They don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to spread out the acuity of the patients. You have one person with all the high acuity patients because they don't know how to do their job. Yeah, they have a title. Every man can have a title as leader, but what you show behind that leadership is what makes you a leader. Are you a team player? Are you going to ask the questions that need to be asked? Are you going to help when it's time to help? It's just leadership comes in so many different ways, and everybody's not born to be a leader.
Okay, so this brings another angle in terms of discernment. How do you discern between the gaslighter from the genuine, authentic leader? So let's put a tag on that, and we're going to come to that. I want to bring in the other two concepts that I think affect in today's culture, that affect or diminish, in my opinion, diminish the role, the male role. We talked about the trajectory of the Black female. Here's another concept, another dynamic. When the wife makes more money than the husband. Now, the traditional religious perspective is man is the head of the household. Is it more challenging today for today's woman, for today's wife, for her to be the chief breadwinner and still adhere to her husband as the head of the household, to defer to his leadership in all things, to include economics, finances, budget?
Okay. So I think we tend to hear the word provider, and traditionally it was distorted from the get-go. Even distorted when it was taught in churches from the beginning. Because again, we go back to how it was weaponized. If we go based on how it was interpreted by men of what that meant and how it was used to either control people or either to minimize, and the people who weaponized it the most, the men who weaponized it the most, were ones who had the most fragile egos. Because a real leader doesn't have to call out or demean or beat on his chest to say, I'm a leader. No more than a Christian truly has to go tell somebody I'm a Christian.
You're a Christian. Agreed.
In your walk,
Agreed.
You don't ever have to open your mouth.
Agreed.
That is what I look for in a man who's a true leader. You never have to say it. I should see that by the way you show up every day, right?
Right on. I agree with you on that.
My grandparents are from the traditional era of religion, very much religious. My grandma was the one that I went to Sunday school, then sat in mass. After Sunday school, I didn't wear makeup, but during that time I would hear stuff about teenagers can't wear, red lipstick. We couldn't even wear pants. I had to wear skirts or dresses all the time. Women didn't wear pants to church. Cool. That's the era I grew up in, the most traditional. My grandmother owned several businesses. Her husband, my grandfather, had the epitome of work ethics. His model of work ethic, he never took a day off his entire career. Steady, stable, 9 to 5, never took a day off. She had 3 to 4 businesses, but his leadership was never threatened. His position as provider and head of the household was never threatened. And to me, that comes from a secure man. It doesn't make a difference how much I make. When I come home, if my man is the leader and the provider of our home, and provider to me is not just who makes the most bread.
Exactly.
Because in a traditional sense, if we go with that, if he lost his job, then they in the street, right?
Oh, okay, so back up for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
The weaponization, or I forgot the word you said, the word you used. Somehow the term head of household was misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
What is the correct interpretation?
Well, if we look at head of household or provider from a monetary sense only, that's what aligns with what you just said about, okay, well, what about women who are making more? That's diminishing his role as a leader or provider in the house. From a woman who the likelihood of me meeting a man who makes more than me is low. Anybody that I date, I'm earning more than them. But that doesn't change how I see them as a leader and a provider and what I'm looking for in them. When I come home, I might be a boss at work because that's what I'm good at with what I do. But when I come home, I want to be a mom, a wife. I want to have the load off. I'm not trying to be a superwoman. I'm not trying to do it all.
But you know what? That right there, the conversation we don't want to have, that comes from insecure females. They take their money and put it where their security is supposed to be in themselves.
But then that connects to what men misinterpret as an attitude of, I don't need a man. No, that's an attitude. That doesn't come from a woman who earns more or who's independent. I'm not saying because I'm able to handle and take care of myself and my business and my life that means I don't need this man. It just says if something goes awry with my provider, my protector, I got us.
Exactly.
Right. You make it sound good, but the reality is just not matching up with the vision that you're casting there. The reality is that, we're talking about trauma and pain. And the reality is in that, money is one of the chief reasons for divorce in marriages. Money is a huge, statistically, a huge contributor. Either the lack of or the disagreement of something around money can really destroy, or statistically speaking, is a number one contributor to the destruction of the marriage unit.
And in a general sense, you can take statistics like that and you can run with them. But I then would ask questions like more detailed. What aspects of how did the money come into play? Was somebody in that relationship that had an addiction to gambling and something was happening with money? Or a lot of times when people get together, we're not even taught to even look at financial compatibility. We're not even taught that.
Well, I'm coming from just a purely male perspective. That's the only perspective.
I'm understanding what she's saying. When she said it was weaponized, okay, provider. We always know the provider to be the person who makes the money. But that's when women we didn't work. They took care of kids. They took care of the house.
You did work. You didn't work out of the side of the home.
Exactly. You work, but you work inside the home. Okay, so he went and got the money. But then, okay, translating all of that, you got this generation, you have these generations coming up that think, okay, I have to be the provider. And the women, you have some women who feel like, okay, money, what makes that person a leader. And it's not necessarily because they have all this money that they're a leader. Okay, they know how to, and we had this conversation on another show. Yes, I know how to make the money, but do you know what to do with it after you make it? That's where it comes in at. Okay, that's where the leadership comes in at. Yeah, you can be the financial provider, but can you do everything else? Well, a lot of men can. Let me take that back. They can cook, they can clean their own stuff. But the compromise, the togetherness, the partnership.
Well, you just said the primary issue. You said it better than me, because that's really what I was getting to. I hear a lot of women, especially coming from a male perspective, a lot of women really do feel that income level makes them the head of household. They attribute.
And I would say go and do a study of a different set of women, because there are women who don't look at it that way. And
I'm not saying there aren't. I'm not saying there are not. I mean, I'm talking to one right now. However, statistically speaking, statistics support my perspective more than what you're saying. Well, if you look at the marriage rates today, it's just not happening.
I would need to know the research you're looking at, the statistic. What does it come from?
You can go and get any research. You take anywhere, you're going to see the trend of research that shows a significant decline in marriage. And then in terms of my male experience, which is my own subjective experience. However, because I do work as a therapist, I'm in a lot of families. I'm also coming from somewhat of an objective experience as well. Money is a key issue in the reason most of my clients are in the system. And most of my clients are in the system, which brings the third component to how I feel the male role is being diminished.
So your objective perspective is based on the population you serve. Not just that. No, I'm including that. And in the objective research that I do, in my platform addressing race and mental health, I'm coming across this information all the time, because I'm always amassing information and comparing it to the impact of race ideology on marriage, on income, on employment, on education. But race analogy. Okay.
So I'm looking at it. There's so many different perspectives to look from. But in all my research, I don't see a trend of healthy, traditional male-female roles on the rise. I don't see that.
Are we talking about the U.S. specifically?
That's all I'm working with right now is the culture of America.
Okay.
Yes, the culture of America.
But you got to think about that too. Okay, you got these men who come from some of them didn't grow up with. They just grew up with mama.
That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going. Exactly.
They grew up with mama. Okay, right. So then mama broke her back taking care of them.
Right.
So if they didn't pick it up on their own, okay, I need to help my mama. I'm just saying our personal. My kids, okay, the way I was married for 5 years, okay, at first we started off equal, right? Mm-hmm. And we started off equal. I got a better career, okay? Well, I elevated in my career. I started making more money, still making money. But then at the same time, he fighting his demons and he falls off. Then he get in his insecurities. Okay. So then that just put a strain. But then when you get in your insecurities and you start doing stuff that a leader's not supposed to be doing, I have 2 boys, they're 16 and 17. They see him not picking up what he need to be picking up. So then the 16-year-old rebels because he's not being a man about his situation. So the 16-year-old, he rebels. I'm not going to do nothing this man say because he's not being who he need to be. And this is the way me and my kids talking. They telling me this. Until a man walks in this house, not doing nothing, he says, when you go at kids, when you as a man, you talk to another man any kind of way, no, they're not going to, even a kid, they're not going to listen to what you have to say. Then that's when you diminish yourself as a leader. I feel like if they rise above their selves or get counseling. We know Black men don't believe in counseling. They're starting to do it more now, but get the counseling that you need to elevate yourself so that you can come out your insecurities. But if they're not coming out their insecurities and they're not doing what they're supposed to, no. And like my son, he's 17. He stepped up and he got a job. He handles what he has to handle on his, as far as he tries to help me. He don't pay any bills. I pay my bills. But at the same time, he does what he has to do for him, his brother, and sometimes his sister. And that's how he does. And he feels like he has to step up in that role, which he doesn't.
So let me give you some reality on that. and I'm coming straight man here.
Mhm.
Today's single mother is not the single mother of old. Today's single mother does not effectively raise their son.
No, we can't.
According to who?
According to man, being a man is not, and this is a pro and a con, what I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
But being a man is not that complex. It's much more complex to be a woman. Being a man is just pretty much a, 2 and 2 equals 4 equation. It's very simple because we're built for function. We're built for usefulness, for purpose. And men recognize men when men see men. And you don't have to know the intricate details of what that includes. When a man enters the room, men recognize another man.
Okay. And do you
just based on that, what I'm saying is, and I'm working in this field and I'm working in these families, and this is not meant as a criticism or judgmental assessment. It's just an objective observation.
Mm-hmm.
Today's single mother is not effective in the slightest at developing young boys to be men for all of the things that we've just been discussing.
And I would say from an objective standpoint, based on clients that I've dealt with, that there could be disparities in what you say based on social economic status as well.
Give me an example.
For example, in my experiences with clients in the population that I serve, there are some single mothers that come out of that. And some of those men who recognize men were men who came from households that were single parent, single mom households.
Don't disagree. Right?
So it really depends on, you can come from an objective standpoint from whatever area of practice you're in.
I don't think what you're saying, doctor, is in disagreement with mine at all. I see no difference. I totally agree with your perspective. But you have to see, Ray Charles can see that the male trajectory in terms of quality, effectiveness, stability, durability, consistency, confidence is on a decreasing trajectory.
I think that has to do with the households. It's individual households.
But before you get into what you think it is, let's make sure we're all seeing the same thing, because I'm getting a feeling that Dr. Holmes, you see the quality of the African American male on the rise.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is we have to be careful with how we can be extensions of what media portrays on TV. If depending on who we talk to and how it's wrapped up and how it's gifted to us, it can be very convincing, but it can also be very it can breed a lot of hopelessness in our community. So I'm not discounting what your experience and what some stats can say if you're looking at a specific area. My only point is that is not the end all be all of what our community is experiencing. And there are some positive aspects where there are some men that are being raised by single women who are more decent human beings than men that are raised in homes with two parents.
And again, I do not. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I get the feeling that you are struggling with accepting because again, I'm the only male on the panel here,
Okay.
And I'm giving you, I fully understand that I have a subjective perspective, as we all do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm giving you my most objective analysis on a collective level, not just based on my personal experience, but combined with my experience,
Mm-hmm.
my research, and the work with other organizations in this field. The pattern is too consistent. In my area, in your area, in Stacy's area, you're going to see the same patterns of behavior and ineffective disparities, particular to our group. You're going to see them, and that, I don't know how that can be up for debate.
But that can be relationship trauma too. The relationship between the mama and the son.
Yes, it can be. Yes, it can be.
It's so much. Okay, the data can be there, but then when you got to go back and you have to look at why is it happening, no matter which way it comes out. Okay?
Well, as the man, I'm telling you why it's happening. So I think, and here's what I've been thinking. As we've been talking, I think this discussion right here shows one of the dynamics that a regular relationship goes through between the male and female role. Because I'm coming to you as a man. I'm coming to you as a man who feels he is genuine, not non-manipulative, non-judgmental, who has everybody's interest at heart. And I'm giving you all straight man perspective on the quality of the men in our community. And I'm getting the feeling from both of you, and this, again, it's not a criticism, but I'm getting the feeling that you all are struggling accepting my perspective. There has to be some caveat. There has to be, but that doesn't mean necessarily. I'm saying, hey, it's not that complicated, y'all. Men know men.
And exactly.
Men know men.
And if a woman has other men that have similar experience or perspectives, and they are also saying, I'm a man and I represent men, but it contradicts what you might say, right? And they're saying the same things, right?
Right.
We can show up and tell ourselves we are all these things.
Yeah.
But we are shaped by our experiences, and it's not difficulty, except maybe that's a projection. Maybe it's I don't know.
Again, doctor.
Example.
Again, doctor. Everything you just said is really not in disagreement with what I'm saying. Of course, that happens. And here's the thing: I say that men recognize men. Here's the other thing: real women recognize men too.
Yes.
And so it still comes back to your assessment and discernment on what kind of man you're dealing with. So even though I don't know if you're necessarily trying to counter my perspective, but really what you're saying is not in disagreement there, because women do recognize a man when they see a man. But one thing that I'm going to add another wrinkle here is that today's woman seems not to know what to do with that kind of man. They're more familiar with the type of man that Stacey alluded to, the gaslighter, the manipulator, the no good doer.
I'm gonna close my mouth on that one, because I'm gonna add some more to them, but I ain't gonna.
It seems like because this is another male experience that I come across a lot. Brothers that say, hey, you know what? I'm doing everything right. I'm there for her. I'm trying to communicate for her. I'm trying to support her, and I'm doing nothing but catching hell. But I'm catching hell now. And now I got a buddy. He's 2-timing, 3-timing, 5-timing, and he's just getting all the love. He's getting all the respect. He ain't even got to go to work.
And I'm going to tell you where that come from.
Okay, tell me.
That come from insecurities in women. I remember when I was in my insecurities, I tuck anything. Now, you're not going to come to me with all that.
Mm-hmm.
I see you coming a mile away.
But you know what women get called or labeled as when they stop taking it? Too masculine.
Yeah,
Or
they
when
say
you can't manipulate them, then they get villainized as not being feminine enough. So you can't win either way.
well, I learned to tell them to go to hell in the most feminine way.
Let me hear you. Let me hear it. Tell me to go to hell, Stacy. Tell me to go to hell. And make me love it. Make me love it. Let me hear it.
Mr. George,
Yeah, baby.
I'm just not gonna do this today.
Ooh, what you leaving me?
No, I'm just not gonna do it. We
But
find I'm in a space right now where I just want to be by myself.
well, come on, babe. Now, come on. Now, we've been together for a minute now. Why
It's all right.
ain't nobody else out there for you but me.
See, that's a good thing. If there's nobody else out there like you, it would be the better place.
But see, you got to twist it. See, I love you.
If you love me, it would be in your actions.
Baby, let's go in the back room. I'll show you through my actions how much I love you.
I do not need them 30 seconds. I do not need them 30 seconds.
See, you wrong for that, baby. You wrong.
Keep your 30.
You wrong for that. You know
them 30.
Keep your one time.
You know it's good.
And it's been a while too, and you still can keep them 30.
I was just holding up. I was just trying to give you some time to heal up, baby.
It's all right.
Because I know I was tough on you the last time.
All right. It's all right. Keep them 30 seconds.
Stacy, you're a trip. Stacy, you're a trip.
For real, I had to learn.
But I felt the love, though. I felt the love. I felt the love. Okay, so you know what? We do need to come to a hard stop. This is really good. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I love the challenge. I love the pushback. I love. There's just so much. There's so much meat on this, and it's Thanksgiving, so we're gonna have to sit at the table and really get down with this issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we got to get ready to close it up. But I my observations, my takeaway here is that as it applies to the culture today, mm-hmm. our systems have not caught up to how to address today. Just like as therapists, social workers, mm-hmm. we have to change our strategy of interventions to make it culturally relevant. And I don't think our systems of service have made that change. I think that today's marriage statistics are a result of an old school mindset in a new school paradigm. And even with the young people that I teach today, they have the traditional male-female role model, but their behavior is everything but that. And they're not even aware of it.
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as, okay, do you, okay, I know both of y'all doing, like, as far as psychology.
Mental health, psychological services, yes.
Yes, psychological services. Okay, so is it predominantly, is it across like different races or?
I practice.
Yeah. Okay, so this is my question though. How many, I mean, like for real, and how many Black people actually do counseling?
Exactly.
We have been so, with marriages was always the pastor, that's who you went to counselor. Well, if they don't believe in that no more, that could be a reason why, like I said, that's still the reason why nothing's happening, because they feel like, okay, we're not gonna go to counseling. We don't have that pastor that these mega churches, how can they get in to see their pastors to even work on their marriages?
Well, you got pastors who stir people away from therapy. Where I am in this area, I actually develop relationships with churches and pastors who actually know where pastoral counseling kind of stops and they need something beyond pastoral.
Right.
develop
Right.
relationships and do workshops for churches to connect, to fill that gap, so that especially more so for the Black community, using the churches and pastors, especially for people who still really heavily rely on their pastors. The pastor now serves as the bridge for them to get mental health services and help. And they've become the bridge. So I know down here and being in a Bible Belt, that is a big thing, is making those connections and relationships with the actual clergy, and then actually using them as allies to help get more people in our community into offices or with therapists, or connected to therapists to deal with childhood trauma, where they've been told, you don't talk about nothing outside of this family.
Right.
Yeah, those people still exist. That teaching still is plaguing our community for generations.
Yes.
But I've been down here for about, since 2006. And I literally moved my practice from DC to here. And that was one of the things I did, is started making connections with the local churches and started doing workshops to just educate them on different types of anxiety and different types of mental health disorders, and building that relationship so that it was no longer such a taboo or stigma when it comes to getting help.
Very important area. That's definitely a shift in the conscience of our community, is that churches are starting to understand the role that mental health really plays within their spiritual paradigm, because there's been a significant split there. So, I really applaud your work in that area. And Stacey, you really hit on the pulse of one of the primary obstacles that in your observation on that. So look, every time we try to close, we can always find another topic. We can always find we can always find something else to go on. This is just how it works. So no platitudes today. We're not going to leave with any thoughts or suggestions, because we've got more questions really to dig into. This could be a year-long series, because honestly, your relationship, the person that you commit your life to, that is you talk about wealth. Everything springs from that, health, wealth, security, physical, emotional, it all springs, everything springs from that. Yeah. This is a really, who hurt you? This takes that question into such realms of depth that a show or two just can't really do it justice. But what does really help is having great minds like you on here, being willing to just bring all these different perspectives, being secure enough to look at different perspectives and different views. That's a huge part of a relationship. Everybody loves it when we all agree. But a relationship is quick to go off the deep end when someone has a nerve to look at it different from you. Oh, hell no, you just insulted me. How can you even fix your lips to say such a god-darn thing like that? And especially as it pertains to our community, because we're already traumatically predisposed. So we're very hypersensitive to any type of slight or insult. So, let's do this. Give me one takeaway from this discussion. Starting with Stacey, give me a takeaway from this discussion, if you have one. If anything has come across an epiphany or conclusion, something you didn't know. Give me a takeaway from this discussion today.
My biggest thing is with this topic is, and it's from the last two shows, okay, the relationship traumas are hurt. You know what I'm saying? We get hurt. It's what we do get to hurt afterwards. And I think a lot of this is caused by our hurt. And we take them and we don't feel them. So we have all this other relationship. We keep going from relationship with the same trauma. And it just builds. That's my takeaway.
All right. Dr. Holmes.
What's my takeaway? Disagreement or different perspectives does not mean discomfort.
Okay, that sounds like a book title. You need to write that.
But I already got one project in the making. I can't.
You can't take no more. You can't take no more.
One thing at a time.
Yeah. Here's my takeaway. I'm going to come from the male perspective. Keep it simple. You know, being a man is not a work of complex structure. We're very basic. You know, for most of us, you know, if you talk to us nice, you feed us, and you give us affection, we're putty in your hands. It's not that challenging, but you have to be willing to accept the whole man package, because there's a part of being a man that is not dependent on the woman.
That's a healthy man. All men are healthy mentally.
Say that again. You said what?
See, you just couldn't take that. You just couldn't take that quietly. You just couldn't take that quietly, could you, Stacey?
That's a healthy man. A healthy mental man is simple.
And one more thing, let me correct that. It ain't 30 seconds. It's 32 seconds.
In one time.
Hey, everything counts. Give me my propers.
I'm not fooling with y'all.
I'm gonna go refresh my beverage and go watch a movie to decompress.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Dr. Holmes. You've been great.
Thank you, George.
Thanks to those who sat and put up with us all for this last hour or so. Have a great week, and until next time we meet, we will see you in the black space.